Sorry about that. Thank you for joining us for our webinar. My name is Beverly. I'm working with Jessica, who's our training coordinator, and we'll be running this webinar. We're from the National Consumer Law Center. Today's date is April 18, 2013. Our webinar today is Investments in Rural America, Create Jobs for the USA Initiative. Our presenters today are Lena Page and Beth Lipson of the Opportunity Finance Network and David Dangler of the National Alliance for Rural Policy Network. He is going to be our moderator. Before we get started, just want to make sure that everyone can hear the webinar. Make sure, if you're calling in through phone, make sure that you please dial in your audio PIN. It helps to basically to put in the pound, the number, and the pound. If you're using mics and speakers, you should be all set. All you need to do is plug it in and make sure that your device volume settings are properly adjusted. If it's not working, just try unplugging and replugging it. All attendees will be muted during the presentation, and this training will be recorded. If you have any questions, please type it in the Q&A function, and we will relay it to the speakers. If you have any technical questions, you can also use the box to ask us questions if you need any help with anything. There will be an evaluation at the end of the webinar, so please answer that after exiting. We will also email you a link of the PowerPoint and the recording after the webinar is done. And that should take tomorrow or so. Also, you can also minimize the control panel if it gets in your way, and that should make it easier for you to see. So I'm going to be introducing David. He is our moderator. Again, he works for the National Alliance for Rural Policy. He's Director of NeighborWorks Rural Initiative for NeighborWorks America. David, are you there?
I'm right here, Beverly. Thanks so very much, and it's my pleasure to serve as moderator today, and really to welcome Lena Page and Beth Lipson from OFN, the Opportunity Finance Network. You know, it's exciting for me to have them on this webinar today. I've been following their work for the last 2 years. You're going to learn a little bit about the Opportunity Finance Network, about CDFIs, community development financial institutions. And for us at the National Alliance for Rural Policy, it's no secret that these are challenging times. Coming out of the worst recession in decades, building on an economic recovery, we've heard how the public sector is tight on funding and things don't look like they're going to get better. We've heard about foundations not having the same amount of resources. So really, the private sector and engaging the private sector becomes terribly important. That's particularly why I'm excited to have Linda and Beth here today, because the Opportunity Finance Network has forged, and you're going to hear about it, a dynamic partnership that really offers a lot of innovation and opportunity for the future. We'll be listening very carefully through the rural lens to see how this applies in our rural communities. But without any further delay, I really want to turn this presentation over to Lena and Beth. I'll be listening carefully. I'll be looking for your questions, and I'll rejoin you towards the end for some questions and answer time. Lena?
Thank you so much, David. So here we are, excited to talk to all of you, and we just wanted to take a moment to thank the National Alliance for Rural Policy as well as the National Consumer Law Center for giving us this opportunity to talk to you about this exciting initiative, and we definitely welcome your perspective, and we'll open it up to questions at the end. So to kick off, we're going to talk a little bit about an exciting program or initiative called Create Jobs for USA, which launched late 2011 and essentially is a cause marketing partnership with Starbucks and Opportunity Finance Network as the leading partners in this effort, which has also attracted the attention of other corporate partners and most excitingly has involved individuals in a way that was quite impressive, we think, in terms of giving contributions and really helping to spread the word. And so this is a partnership that combines the capital and visibility in terms of the benefits that it brings back to CDFIs that OFN kind of leads and manages as the membership association nationally for CDFIs. So let me talk about how it got started. Way back on August 8th in 2011, Howard Schultz personally wrote an email to his staff, and so he's writing to the people that work at Starbucks. And essentially he was just having a moment of deep frustration, and he commented in his email to staff that he was observing this environment that was both economically and politically uncertain. And he was expressing his own personal frustration about the government gridlock that was in place way back then and apparently still is in place today. But what he was doing was putting a sort of a message out about how he felt that Starbucks had a responsibility to lead through these uncertain times. So he, as a CEO, is kind of expressing a mission and a purpose greater, clearly, than selling cups of coffee. And he was sort of introducing this notion to his staff. What happened was this particular email ended up getting leaked to the media, and media picked up the story. And so suddenly USA Today, New York Times, middle of August are featuring an article about Howard's stance. And Starbucks began receiving this flood of emails from the public, from the general public, really interested, really excited, wanting to know what was going to be done. And so that same Saturday, so that same week, Howard called some of his key staff together for pizza night on a Saturday at his home to talk about the problems that he was commenting on. And, you know, essentially he was saying, I feel it's time to be a part of something bigger, and we need to take a look at this jobs crisis. But we sell coffee. Who can we partner with? Who is out there that can help us to bring something to bear nationally that would help to address this jobs crisis, and in particular in the areas where jobs are needed most? And very fortunately, one of his senior advisors had met Mark Pinsky, CEO and president of Opportunity Finance Network, and said, you know, I think, Howard, there's a group out there, and there's a set of financing groups that can help. Let me get in touch with them, make a call, and see what we can do. And so essentially from this mid-August time frame, very little time passed before a major public announcement on October 3rd about Create Jobs for USA, essentially inviting the public to partake of this initiative. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. Hi, this is Beth. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what Create Jobs for USA is, some of our progress to date, and where we stand and what the program has accomplished, and then turn it back to Lina to talk a little bit about the branding and visibility and marketing associated with the program. So, what is Create Jobs for USA? When we initially started structuring the program with Starbucks, we knew we wanted to have, a wide reach. We wanted to serve both rural and urban communities. We wanted to, our primary purpose was to help with the jobs crisis at hand. And we knew that the group of institutions that, OFN works with, which is a network of community development financial institutions, or CDFIs, could help address that. One of the primary things they do is make loans to community businesses that help create and retain jobs in low-income communities. And so, one of the hardest things with CDFIs in growing is raising the equity capital that they need to, leverage debt and make more loans. And so with that as a backdrop, we started, structuring the Create Jobs for USA program. So Create Jobs for USA raises donations. It's basically a grant fund. It raises donations from individuals and small and large corporations, and it aggregates those at OFN, and then it distributes them to a network of CDFIs. And the premise really around raising the donations that we came up with Starbucks is Americans helping Americans create jobs. And, you know, the Americans are individuals, they're, you know, small companies, and they're large companies. And all of those are helping to create jobs. And so this is really a unified effort. And what the fund does is it takes the donations and grants that we raise, aggregates them, and provides capital grants to a network of CDFIs in rural and urban communities throughout the U.S. And what is really great about this initiative is, you know, how CDFIs use that to leverage additional capital. You know, one of the big benefits is that CDFIs can take every dollar donated through the Create Jobs for USA, and on average they can borrow an additional $6 of capital from banks, from religious institutions, from from foundations and individuals, and they aggregate, you know, that in total $7 of capital, and make loans to community businesses to create and retain jobs. So there's really a great leveraging factor where, you know, every dollar that's raised creates the $7 of loans in the community. And the community businesses that help to create and retain jobs are really diverse. They are, you know, some for-profit and nonprofit small businesses. They may be commercial real estate. They could be charter schools. They could be child care centers, and even affordable housing. So it's really a diverse range of community businesses that are helping to create and retain jobs throughout the U.S. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our progress to date with this Create Jobs for USA initiative. As Lynna mentioned, it's been around since late 2001. 2011. And to date, we have raised $15 million in donations, which we are extraordinarily proud about and very excited. And it's provided the, you know, that hardest to raise capital for our network of community development financial institutions. I'm going to talk in a minute a little bit more about, you know, where that $15 million came from and who are some of, you know, the funders of that. But just continuing on here, you know, that $15 million, we reached more than 800,000 individuals and small businesses and corporations. So clearly, this initiative, you know, really touched a lot of different people, a lot of corporations, and really got the attention of a lot of folks out there. Our expected job creation and retention from that $15 million that we raised is 5,000 jobs in the community, and that's supported by $105 million of loans to community businesses. And then I just wanted to mention that the capital grants that we dispersed related to this program served 110 different CDFIs throughout the country, and that includes 27 that are particularly focused on rural communities. And those 110 CDFIs serve nearly the entire United States. I think it was 48 states now that we're up to that we serve through the Create Jobs for USA initiative. So as I said up front, it was really critical for us to have a wide reach and a diversity of the types of institutions that, you know, we were serving, and ultimately the community businesses that we were serving. And we think we were successful at doing that through this Create Jobs for USA program. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why Starbucks chose both CDFI, the CDFI industry, and OFN as partners with them in this Create Jobs for USA initiative. I think, you know, first and foremost was the focus on performance that OFN and the CDFI industry brings. as Lena said, when Starbucks initially was thinking about what they can do to help address the jobs crisis, one thing they thought about was, do they want to make loans to small businesses themselves? And that was a consideration when they were thinking about this. And then, they found this network of lenders that are already out there doing it in underserved communities and realized that was a better way to go. And I think one of the key factors in that was that it was really a performance-based financing network, that we were focused on performance, that we could track that performance, that we could track the outcomes of that performance. And I think that was really a critical factor in them choosing this industry to partner with. And then, as I mentioned, that the whole leveraging factor, I think, was extremely appealing to them. And you can see in some of the materials that have subsequently come out and on the website, this focus on helping to leverage. So every dollar that is donated to the fund can help create $7 of loans in the community. And I think that leveraging factor was really quite important to them as we help to market this program. I think the next factor is really the impact that CDFIs have in their communities. CDFIs are community lenders, but they can really deliver impact in their communities, and they're able to measure that impact. And I think that was a critical factor, because when you're raising donations at a high profile from the public, from individuals, from corporations, we really need to be able to demonstrate results of the program. And so we were able to, through our network of CDFIs, be able to track that. We, through the program, we get data from the Create Jobs for USA awardees on a quarterly basis on the community loans that they're making and on the jobs that they are creating in the community. And as part of developing the program, we developed a model around jobs creation that we had leading economists weigh in on and endorse our model, where we came up with that $21,000 of loans in the community to community businesses create or maintain one job. So I think that was a really important factor, that we could demonstrate impact in the community, and we were able to document it and report back out to the community on our progress. I think a third factor in why Starbucks chose this industry is really that we were able to be a partner with them in their marketing and visibility. The industry, both OFN and CDFIs, had the capacity to support their visibility campaigns. So we were able to provide them statistics on the industry, critical information on lending, on charge-offs, on performance of the industry. We were also able to deliver to them, through our network of CDFIs, on-the-ground stories, borrower stories, impact stories, jobs creation, and Lena will get into that a little bit in more detail, as we get into the marketing and branding aspect. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the $15 million in donations and where that came from, because I think this serves as a good model as we are, as we're sort of looking out at other potential national partnerships. As we created Create Jobs for USA, it's really an open platform where we are inviting, other partners to join in. It wasn't just OFN and Starbucks. We really, the whole purpose of it was Americans helping Americans, and it was really an open platform and inviting others to join. And so in addition to, Starbucks and OFN, which were the founding members, we invited other large corporations to be headline supporters with us. And with that, what that meant was, in addition to making some type of donation themselves, they really helped market and increase the visibility of the program themselves as well. So we had 3 other headline supporters: Google Offers, Banana Republic, and Citi. And I'll just give you an example of one to how they engaged with the community and their customers and employees. Banana Republic was one of our partners, and they hosted a couple of two 4-day events at their stores where they had sales and signage and really marketed this, where they were inviting their customers in, and a portion of the sales from those 4-day sales went to Create Jobs for USA. And so it was really an exciting, initiative with us, and we helped them, put together some of the information, put together some borrower stories, helped with the signage, and so it really, highlighted the CDFI and the Create Jobs for USA initiative. So it was a great partner to us in that they really engaged both their employees as well as their customers in learning about this industry, in participating, and being part of it. We had a number of other companies as contributors that couldn't provide as much, in terms of dollar amount or, commitment to help improve our visibility, but were really sort of critical contributors to the initiative as well. And I list just a couple on here. And they were really a diverse group, from MasterCard to Facebook to Kroger as our most recent. And then, as we said, one of the most important aspects of the program was just engaging the public. And, regular individuals throughout the U.S. And so individuals had the ability to donate $5 to Create Jobs for USA and receive a wristband to show their support. And that really engaged individuals. And what we were able to do through that was initially the wristbands were available at more than 6,800 Starbucks locations throughout the U.S. And so people could go into a Starbucks. The wristbands were there, and they could make a donation and receive one. Those wristbands were in the Starbucks store for a year, and we were thrilled about that. And they continue to be available. Starbucks no longer offers them at the store, but they do continue to be available on the Create Jobs for USA website, and we list the URL here. And so this was really a way for individuals to stand up and show their support and be able to, demonstrate their support. And it was really exciting for us to just, walk around and see folks that we didn't even know wear the wristbands and be, engaged and excited about this initiative. I wanted to mention one final aspect of trying to raise funds for this program, which was an initiative that we actually participated in this year. And I'm mentioning this because I know a number of the folks on the phone are nonprofit organizations, and I think crowdfunding is something that is really a growing source of fundraising at nonprofits. So I thought it was helpful to mention. OFN participated in a jobs challenge that was put on by the Huffington Post earlier this year. It was a Q1 initiative where they invited nonprofits that were involved in job creation of some form or another in the U.S. To participate in a job-raising challenge. And nonprofit organizations could raise funds through CrowdRise, which is a crowdfunding website. So you could post, and I have an example up here of our Create Jobs for USA page, and there were more than 70 other nonprofits that had pages, and we were all sort of competing to raise the most funds through this jobs challenge. And so participants had the ability to blog, and Linda's going to talk a little bit more about that when we get into the marketing piece. But I just wanted to mention this because, through Create Jobs for USA, we did not raise a tremendous amount of funds. We raised less than $5,000. But we did have a number of folks that have not participated with us before engaging and going on this website and donating. And a lot of them were, relatively small donations. But I think as a nonprofit industry, that this will really be a growing source of fundraising for the industry. And I know at OSN it's something that we are going to look more into, because I think it really will be an important aspect going forward. As Lynna will talk about, the visibility from this job-raising challenge was equally important to us, and really an exciting piece of the job-raising challenge. So with that, I will turn it over to Lynna to talk about branding and marketing.
Great. Thank you, Beth. So jumping right in, I left you with this memory of a pizza party on a Saturday night and someone saying, I think I might know somebody who could help with this. And so what this points to is reputation and branding, and essentially how do you establish a lasting impression. And so just a little comment on that. OSN rebranded as an organization back in 2005, moving from a name and an identity that was National Community Capital Association, very well known within the industry of CDFIs, to a new identity, Opportunity Finance Network, with the idea that this was positioning us for more awareness with audiences beyond the industry. We had done market research. We had learned that simply resting on community development and calling ourselves an association limited us. It held us back. Very memorably, one board member talked about how CDFIs work in a hall of mirrors when we should be working in a hall of windows. We should be finding ways to really put a spotlight on our work. And at that time, market research was telling us that people were a little confused and thought perhaps we were just a charitable organization, or maybe a bit bureaucratic and governmental, and as opposed to financially expert and impact-oriented and results-oriented. So our icon that you can see in the corner of the slide here, our name, was all positioning ourselves to have a lasting and memorable position within the field that would be attractive to new audiences. So just a note that this is a long process. You never know when an opportunity will come along, and organizations should today be preparing themselves for the idea that perhaps they'll get that introduction to an exciting new partner, and be mindful of your own reputation. What is your, how memorable are you? Can people retrieve your name and think of who you are quickly in the moment? And so, thank goodness, at that pizza party, our brand came through. As Beth says, or shared with us in her slides earlier, naturally, it's not just the brand. There was a lot more to it, and they needed, Starbucks really needed to kick the tires, if you will. They asked numerous questions, and we went through a due diligence process. And so it wasn't an overnight success. It wasn't like, great, well, let's go, let's do this deal. We absolutely had to go through a number of diligence processes, which included looking at performance, looking at how quickly we could get money into the hands of the beneficiaries and the borrowers to create these jobs. There was a lot that went on, and we demand excellence of ourselves and of our members. And I think just our stance, our leadership stance, really helped us in this regard. Another quick comment, we really only had 8 weeks from, sort of when we got the phone call to when they wanted to launch. And again, this required, it was a very major challenge, so I don't want to, it's great when these opportunities come along, but not to make light of it. We were in the midst of a very busy season preparing for our annual conference, our awards program, and yet we knew that this was an opportunity that comes along not that often, and so the team here really rose to the challenge. We put in the extra hours. We worked over weekends. I'm smiling here with Beth because she and I were certainly on those speed dials and on email, and we were working with a West Coast partner as an East Coast, headquartered company. But we had those 8 weeks. We made the most of them, and we were so delighted when we finally did launch. So just to talk a little bit about those unexpected added elements. There were wristbands that people could donate $5 in a Starbucks store or now online as well. There was merchandise, and so again, I never would have imagined sitting at my desk looking at a package of coffee, and I was literally proofing, that our logo and some of the copy, was correct on this indivisible blend of coffee, which unfortunately you can no longer buy. But the really amazing thing that we generated here was a ton of mainstream media coverage. And just to talk about that for a minute, it ranged from television to radio to print to online, and it was a blend of paid and earned media. More of it was earned media, or the reporters were writing articles. There was some paid for media where Starbucks had some credits essentially that were able to be leveraged for television commercials, a few print ads that appeared, but all of this added together, and we'll talk more about the visibility in a minute. I wanted to talk about the blogs that appeared and that you can look up, in fact, if you're interested. Sort of back to these wonderful partnerships that bring added benefits with them. Huffington Post was involved, again, in a jobs-focused way, and so through Huffington Post we got involved with this crowd raising and crowdsourcing opportunity, and Huffington Post encouraged everyone who was participating in this job-raising challenge to submit blogs for potential feature on their very well-read online portal. And OFN was able to go back to beneficiaries who had benefited from the program, such as Jalen Rose, who formed a leadership academy. Again, he's a sports figure and who is now a philanthropic individual as well, who is looking to turn around the challenge of education in Detroit. And we were delighted, and he was delighted to work with us and to write a piece. And again, we approached him, we gave him sort of some key ideas, and he was happy to participate. Similarly, we were able to co-author a piece and work with one of the executives over at Starbucks, again, talking a little bit about why the partnership formed and so on. So I think the lesson here is that this initiative has had these resounding and lasting results, that even as later stage opportunities come along, we are able to go back to our members, the beneficiaries, partners, and really look for and unlock other ways to tell our story. And so, again, it's really been tremendous from a visibility standpoint. Talking of visibility, we have generated literally over 1 billion media and advertising impressions. Impressions are not typically what I count, so on my milestone goals as a nonprofit worker here, I look at press clippings, and typically I'm looking at hundreds. I'm trying to get in the several hundreds of press clippings for my organization in a given year. We don't typically count media impressions. Impressions are a term that becomes bandied about when you are doing large media buys and getting major national visibility. It relates to how many readers or viewers of a television program or of a newspaper or an online outlet might have encountered your message. And typically you have big media firms or PR firms who are helping you to calculate these numbers. So I know this number because Edelman Public Relations, who was working with Starbucks, was partnering on this effort as well and was able to track and give us some of these statistics. This is not a typical year, and I made it quite clear that, for my personal milestone goals, I don't want every year to have this 1 billion number attached to it. But it was obviously delightful to get this kind of incredible visibility. And again, it was a blend of paid and earned media. Memorably, there was a television commercial, which you can still see if you go to YouTube and type in Create Jobs for USA and Starbucks, but a 60-second commercial that aired during Game 7 of the World Series. Again, another wow moment associated with this initiative. But lasting elements of the program have to do with the stories. We've collected borrower stories from our members who participated in the program. We continue to do so. We always, curate and check these stories quite carefully. They go through extra levels of scrutiny, knowing that we're about to expose these stories on the national stage. And so, we make sure the borrowers are, articulate or comfortable with their quotes, that the facts we're referencing are accurate, and that, we have permission forms to use this information. And stories are posted on the Create Jobs for USA website, ongoing, are pitched to media, and continue to help us to achieve greater public relations visibility than we ever have before. So with that said, I thought it would be sort of neat for you to hear a little bit about one or two of our stories, just to get a sense of, sort of who was affected and who benefited as a result of Create Jobs for USA and all these partners coming together and working closely with our network of CDFIs. So first up is Freshets Sales and Service, which is a business that is based in Maine, in a town called Buckfield. And Freshets is a small, locally owned outdoor landscape and garden equipment center. They sell snow blowers, lawn mowers, that type of thing, in a very rural town, which is Buckfield, Maine. And the owner, after 30 years of operating the business, literally had to sort of admit it was time for him to retire. And as he was preparing for his retirement, he realized he was basically going to have to close down the business. There was a gentleman who worked for him, a gentleman named Greg, who wanted to take on the business and was very motivated to do so, but as is very typical, in fact, especially in Maine, access to capital and financing was just a real challenge. It was a big mountain for him to climb. And so luckily, he was able to get an introduction to a CDFI, Community Concepts Finance Corporation, and that CDFI participated in the Create Jobs for USA program and was able to give him a loan, assess the situation, and as a result, he was able to keep the business open, keep his own job, retain another employee from losing their job, and create new jobs. And so, again, a great success story in a rural area. And then just to touch on one other very quickly, Brookford Farm, located in Canterbury, New Hampshire, is owned by a couple, Luke and Katerina, who have been providing healthy, naturally grown food for several years on leased farmland. And unfortunately, they found out that the lease that they had was not going to be renewed. And so rather concerned, they looked around and again hit that same obstacle. They wanted to purchase land and they could not get the financing. They fortunately were introduced to New Hampshire Community Loan Fund. They were able to buy a parcel of land. They were able to go back for a subsequent loan to finance equipment needs. These loans have saved 15 jobs, have also created some temporary jobs, a handful of construction jobs, and, big picture, open land is preserved and sustainable family farming continues. So I think it's just wonderful. There are so many incredible stories, and, I'm pleased to be able to share two. And I'm sure you have stories of your own, but really just so satisfying to meet the people at the end of the day, these American jobs that are being saved or retained or preserved. So kind of, we wanted to allow some time for questions and answers, so winding down. We have learned a lot of lessons along the way. Indeed, these types of initiatives can be new drivers of both visibility and capital for the field. We feel that one of the biggest lessons has to do with the fact that we were well aligned with a corporation. When Starbucks met us and when we met Starbucks, we recognized that there was a similar sense of mission and purpose as it related to creating jobs here in America. And so, that is a critical starting point. The company or group that you are going to be working with should really be closely aligned, or you need to find that alignment. And from there, many good things can happen. Clearly, our brand and reputation was important. We couldn't have done the deal if we didn't stand up to the test. At the end of the day, we had to simplify a field that is financial and that has some complexity to it, to the point where it would be more accessible to consumers. That was extremely challenging. We're proud of what we ended up with, but that certainly put us through another set of challenges. Borrower stories at the end of the day were how we were able to get such a tremendous visibility. And we firmly believe that there are many, many corporations who are looking to provide solutions to problems, and CDFIs and other organizations such as CDCs and other groups throughout rural America truly provide solutions to hard problems, and that we think that right there is a great opportunity to explore further, and we encourage everyone to really consider that your asset, your stories with your solutions. And to learn more about CDFIs, please go to opportunityfinance.net. And if you'd like to, again, learn more about Create Jobs for USA or donate and get a wristband, go to createjobsforusa.org. So Beth and I, again, wanted to thank everyone and invite David to open it up to questions.
Thanks so much. Really, that was great. And it's great to hear, how successful this has been and how it's grown. Speaking of success, when you shared 15 million raised, I wonder if how that aligns with where your expectations were going into this.
That's a very good question, David, and I will tell you that we didn't really know going into this, how much this could raise. I think we were very pleased with the $15 million that we raised, and I think there's always room for more. And we would like to engage additional corporations and additional individuals in supporting this initiative. So I think we're thrilled with the $15 million that we've raised. I think, again, as I said, there's not that many sources of capital grants to CDFIs that, that can be used for leveraging, additional dollars. And so, that $15 million has gone very far, supporting this industry. But, we'd love to have new partners as well. So I don't think we had a dollar number of expectations going in, but, we were really, as Lena said, excited with the results to date. But would like to do more.
Well, fair enough. And I just want to remind our participants today that if they type their questions in, we're on the lookout for them, and we'll do our best to get to them. But let me go ahead and jump over to a branding-related question. You've shared the sort of rebranding story that OFN went through, and it sounds like you're thinking with your members about CDFIs themselves and the challenge of getting across, in an elevator speech to total strangers what exactly a CDFI is and making it a household word. You want to share a little bit of the thinking there and what's up?
Great. Thank you, David. This is Lena. I'll pick that up. So we, as part of OFN's strategic vision, we really have embraced this idea that it is our role, our desire to help elevate this entire class or category of financial institutions. And so very much, kind of on a regular basis, we talk about how can we build greater awareness of this category of CDFIs. And so we're looking to build not only our organizational brand, but really raise visibility for the field as a whole. And we recognize that it's alphabet soup, and so CDFI just, happens to be associated with us because there's a CDFI fund. There are a number of reasons you can go back in time to figure out how did we get here. But it certainly doesn't translate to something your mother, might know or your cousin might know. And that was one of the delights of this partnership when there were wristbands and job creation, sort of posters and the handouts in the Starbucks stores. It was a lot easier to kind of quickly get to at least a beginning level understanding of the role of CDFIs and who we are and what we do. So OFN is currently engaged in reassessing how we communicate. We are working on updating messaging and branding in light of what we've learned and also in light of our current environment. And so a profound lesson here is you might have looked at your name or your messaging and positioning many years ago, the world continues to evolve and change, and you want to make sure that it's up to date. So we see great opportunity to simplify, to continue to simplify, and to continue to project more broadly. And we are very hopeful that by the time our annual conference comes around in the fall, in October, that we will be able to talk back to our constituents through some new ideas that will be revealed at the conference, but essentially updated branding and messaging. We're not changing our name, but we believe some new ways to talk about the field. So it's a constant challenge and puzzle. We will be running some focus groups at some of our regional meetings and doing a bit more work over the coming months. But it is exciting to continue to work on this, and we welcome partnering with other groups. We think it is a challenge, for many, many of us who work serving these underserved communities. And so perhaps a little later in the year, there may be some opportunities for cross-industry branding and messaging and marketing discussions, and we might welcome that as a way to share some of what we've learned and broaden the conversation further.
Linda, I know when you visited with our network at NeighborWorks and you shared some of the messaging video work that you've done, everybody was just so impressed, and there were lots of ahas and nodding and around the room as people realized, gosh, they're really addressing challenges we face. You mentioned that YouTube folks can just search for a video, but what about going to Create Jobs for USA or Opportunity Finance websites?
Yes.
Do you have any of the videos there too, or what?
Yes, thank you for that reminder, David. When I mentioned YouTube, there is a 60-second television commercial, which is an infographic that aired during this World Series game and a few times subsequently. And that only exists really on YouTube, and you have to type in Create Jobs for USA and Starbucks to find it. We have developed a number of additional videos that I am so proud of that, again, just speak to the power of storytelling and use this modern, sort of medium, if you will, which incorporates music, camera angles, authentic people telling their own story in their own words. And on the Create Jobs for USA site are a few professionally produced videos. Again, the power of this partnership, we were very pleased to be able to partner with a media group that had worked with Al Gore, for example, on his environmental film and other sort of major, sort of media pieces. Well, they advised us and worked with us on a couple of video snippets that I encourage you to look at on Create Jobs for USA. As well, Opportunity Finance worked on an animated piece that was an effort to explain the category, and we produced that. We were working on it when Starbucks called, actually. So back in 2011, that summer, that was one of the projects on deck that did get completed, and I'm very proud of, and that's on the OpportunityFinance.net homepage. It's probably the third panel. But again, it's an example of a communication that's trying to explain the field as a whole, and that we were hoping people could use to introduce this idea of, in fact, we are financial intermediaries, which is a not very sexy way to put it. So how do we talk about the ripple effect? And what this is about is opportunity multiplied, how we multiply opportunity.
Sure. I was thinking when the word got out that you had attracted $15 million of potential investment capital, what did that do for your membership?
David, I'll take that. This is Beth. Our membership, I think was equally excited about both the capital that this program raised and the visibility that it afforded the industry. Because, I think as Linda's talked about, it's really hard to get, this type of national visibility for the industry. But I think in terms of this particular capital, I think this, as I sort of reiterated, capital grants is the hardest form of of capital that CDFIs can raise. It's grants to allow them to leverage additional dollars and bring on additional debt, and even the debt capital that they raise is hard to find, but the equity that supports that is even harder. So I think just having a program focused on the hardest to raise type of capital that can really leverage the impact that they're having in terms of job creation was very exciting for them. And I think putting that structure of the program in place and sort of thinking about that up front, and how can we have the greatest impact, and an impact that we can sort of explain and tell to others so that they want to be part of it, I think was important. So our members, I think, were really excited. As you can tell, we have a national membership network of right around 200 CDFIs. You can see more than half of our membership participated with us in this program. They needed to apply to be a Create Jobs for USA awardee, and you had to be an OFN member to apply. But we don't get that many programs that more than half the membership participates in. So I think that speaks to their excitement in being part of this.
So just to put membership in OFN in perspective, could you talk a little bit about the size of the potential market of CDFIs? I know that Treasury is now going through a recertification drill just to kind of be a little bit more exact about how many active CDFIs we have out in the field now. But when you're looking at the potential for OFN to grow, how does it look to you?
In terms of the universe of CDFIs, no one's pinpointed exactly the number out there. I think that in terms of CDFIs, there's probably around 800 to 1,000 CDFIs in the U.S. And our membership is right around 200. So I think OFN is certainly looking to grow our membership. It's one of our sort of key goals, because we want to expand the coverage that we are having in underserved communities throughout the U.S. In terms of our membership, organizations do need to apply to be members. We have both, we have certain membership criteria that focuses both on mission and impact, as well as performance, and that's financial performance and impact performance. And if you're interested more in membership, you can certainly visit our website at opportunityfinance.net. We have a whole section on membership. But I think we are really looking to grow our membership, and particularly we serve, right now our membership is a greater number of community development loan funds. We do have some community development credit unions and banks and venture capital funds as members, but it's predominantly now community development loan funds. We are looking to expand more in those other areas as well, and doing some particular outreach to the credit unions, banks, and ultimately to the venture capital funds as well. So we think there's a great opportunity to continue to grow our membership.
I just want to jump over to the two rural examples that you shared, and I'm imagining how exciting it would be if we had hundreds of rural examples. And so I'm thinking, along the lines of someone listening from a rural community who may not know CDFIs well, who may be kind of curious, where's the nearest CDFI? What kind of advice would you give not only to individual listeners who might want to learn more about what a CDFI is and whether they have one nearby, but also to networks who work in rural, who may be motivated by this webinar to try to make those connections? What kind of advice would you give so that we can really move some of these terrific resources more aggressively out into rural communities?
Great, David. Wonderful question. This is Lynna again. One thing I would point to is right on the opportunityfinance.net homepage and throughout, there should be a clearly marked find or CDFI locator opportunity or option which lets you, if you click on it, bring up a little interface that lets you type in your state of interest or the type of lending you're interested in, and bring back a list of CDFIs across the nation. So you can look regionally, you can look by type of lending, et cetera. And I do know that CDFIs and Opportunity Finance Network really do think about how we exist in an ecosystem, and that we really believe that the problems of persistent poverty can be addressed and are being addressed, need to be addressed more aggressively, and it will happen through this sense of an extended family, groups partnering with other groups, sparking innovation, coming up with new products, new services to expand geographically. I know we look a lot at the challenges of rural America. The demographics are less dense, and so sometimes service organizations or sources of products or services are harder to find, fewer, further apart. And so it is through this notion of aggregating and joining and forging partnerships that some of our best and most exciting solutions are coming to light. And so, again, we are very much thinking about these challenges. In fact, our awards program, the Next Awards, talks about how can we expand to bring more products and services to more parts geographically, and we get very excited about those kinds of innovative partnerships. So we would strongly encourage anyone who's listening to just sort of take a look at what CDFIs are near you or in the areas that you serve or are aligned in terms of the mission or the type of lending that you might be interested in, and consider reaching out to them. I think, again, some of our very innovative partnerships come from just those kinds of conversations.
And I think it's also worth noting that on the Create Jobs for USA website, there is a tab which is more of these borrower stories. And so, we pulled 2 of them, which were examples in rural communities. There are a number of others that are examples in rural communities on that page, and you can sort of flip through and sort of get a sense for what types of borrowers are being served. And again, those are just a snapshot of a couple dozen, and there's many more stories, but that's another place you can go to see more than just the 2 that we mentioned here today.
All right, and I know we're running out of time here, so let me ask the final question, although I'd love to have another hour to talk about crowdfunding. But the final question would be, you've had a lot of experience now, and you've raised $15 million. What do you all see downstream for this campaign? Are you still looking for new partners? What's the horizon look like to you?
David, that's a great ending question to this. We're excited about a couple different things. One, the Create Jobs for USA program, is still continuing. We could still continue to, raise funds from individuals and corporations. Clearly the wristbands are no longer available in Starbucks stores because they only made a year-long commitment to doing that. But we do continue to do that, and we're excited to continue that aspect of it. And then next, just as we sort of look out into the future, we really see this partnership as a great model for other potential partnerships going forward. We think both in the area of job creation and in many other areas that our network serves, affordable housing, healthy foods, the environment, that we can really be a partner with corporations that are interested in helping these areas. I think that's one of the key lessons that we learned, that there are a lot of corporations out there that that they all have their corporate social responsibility, mission and vision, and that our industry can really tap in and help help them come up with a solution to the problems that they're trying to serve. And just really seeing how they can be partners with us going forward, and we will continue to figure out how that can work. And I think having Starbucks find OFN and the industry as a solution to the jobs crisis, or as a beginning of the solution to the jobs crisis, just opened our eyes that there's a lot of other corporations out there that have their own vision and mission, and that we want to help be partners with a number of them. And so we really see this as sort of a model for, and I know on the phone there's probably a number of different nonprofits and other organizations that have their own missions, and looking for the corporations that you can partner with that can you can really help them in what they're trying to do.
Well, thank you so much, and really I think you've made a huge contribution to the field, and there's lots more we can learn, and you really, I think, whet our appetites to learn more. Thank you both so much, and I think maybe Beverly or Jessica have a last word.
I will be taking over. So thank you to our presenters, Lena and Beth, and thank you, David. And thank you for our audience for staying with us. Sorry about that. So the next series in our webinar, this webinar series, it's May 16th, Grassroots Fundraising in Rural Communities. Presenters Andrea Racha and Diana Telfason. And we have another one coming up in June 20th, so please check that out. Just a reminder to please do the evaluation when you sign out, and Jessica will email you the PowerPoint and the recording in a few days. And thank you again to our speakers.